Welcome, Wapplers from around the world. We are broadcasting live from the International Space Station today. No, not really. That's just me trying to be funny. Got to change my background. There we go. There we go. George's new Wappler logo, Wappler 5. We have, this is our monthly Wappler Meetup. We meet on the first Friday of every month. We normally meet at 4 p.m. Netherlands, except for today because your friendly host messed up the time zone. I apologize for that. But future meetups will be happening at 4 p.m. Netherlands on the first Friday of every month. Would invite you all to join us. Also, I'd like to invite any Wappler who has a favorite tool or a favorite solution that they would like to present to folks. We can set you up in a Wappler meetup so you can educate the rest of us. We have Paul from South Africa is going to do a follow-on video of his amazing CSS work in February, but we have March. The March meetup is open. So I'm going to start with some introductions here. If we can do this quickly, I'd like to ask you to tell us your name, what you use Wappler for, and what country you're from. Ben, would you like to start?
Yes, my name is Ben Glazier. I live in Melbourne, Australia, right down under, and the time here is 3 o'clock in the morning. Normally I'd have my pajamas on, but that didn't work out quite so well last time, so I've just kept my clothing on, and I guess I'll just stay awake all night. But to get back to the topic, I use Wappler for just about anything, from horse racing guides through to occupational health and safety, job inductions, a whole range of stuff. Whenever somebody comes up with a problem, I try and solve it for them. Most of the websites that I create are just the normal websites for shopkeepers. They want a presence on the internet. So they're fairly simple sort of websites.
That's awesome. I'd also like to point out that Ben has some awesome videos on the Wappler YouTube channel as well. And also Brian English. Brian, if I could ask you to introduce yourself, what you use Wappler for, and what country are you in?
Brian can't hear you.
You're muted, or you can't hear.
Muted. Yeah,
Okay.
I should be with you now.
Oh.
Yeah, Brian English. I'm in the UK. I'm right up in the very north of England, about 5 miles from the Scottish border. I'm now retired, so I'm not planning on any huge big projects in Wappler in the future. In the past, I've tended to do property management systems. I've done festival booking systems. I've done quite a bit on the sort of medical background, doing medical therapy, and lots of general sort of, websites, as they would say. I'm looking now, say over the last 12 months or so, I've been winding down, looking to retire. Basically, most of my Wappler work will probably now be doing tutorials, videos, and support for the Wappler community out there, because I've got the time to give it and I enjoy doing it.
Well, we thank you very much for that, Brian. And I would encourage everyone to check out Brian English's video tutorials on YouTube as well. Tom Rigg.
Hi, my name's Tom Rigg. We use Wappler for mainly in-house purposes. We've been developing in-house for the company website since 1996. It's a global website, runs on a lot of database interactivity. Inside that, it sort of grew legs pretty quickly and grew into a big international company portal. which spawned about another 9 or 10 websites on top of that. So we use a lot of like training course booking systems, customer recruitment systems, file management for resumes and CVs. I'm sorry, I'm based in United Kingdom, Northeast, just up the road from Brian, actually. So we use Wappler mainly in-house, but there has been a few periods in the past where we've outsourced some of the IT capabilities that we have in-house to other third parties and other companies that we deal with.
Interesting.
Mainly for, just for basic websites for the third party stuff. But in-house, we tend to do quite complex database-driven applications.
That's awesome. Thank you, Tom. Bob, the Iceman. You're muted, Bob.
Unmute. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Tell us
Okay,
your
I'm
name, what you use Wappler for, and what country you're in.
I'm in Lake of the Ozarks in the United States, in central Missouri, and I use Wappler for all kinds of things. Selling, I've got a lot of boat sales sites. I do a medical site that takes a lot of my time. That if you've seen, I did a series on here earlier that kind of talks about the medical website that I design and work on. Currently, I'm integrating UPS shipping into the system because whenever something ships, there's a lot of times there's 5, 6, 10 orders in a box, and they're having to go through and enter all of the all of the shipping numbers in each of the orders when they come through, and I've more or less automated that whole system. So I'm just kind of in the I'm going live with that here on Monday. So I've been kind of buried in getting that project going.
Awesome. Iceman, I love it. That sounds like a future monthly meetup when you get all the bugs worked out. We wish you the best of luck on the launch.
All right, thanks.
Thomas Royko. Unmute.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, awesome.
Unmute button. I had a glass in front of where it was at. I'm like, where the heck is it on the screen?
But tell us what you use Wappler for and where you're from.
Yeah, so Tom Ryko. I'm from Ohio in the USA, and I have a small consulting business, and one of my major clients deals with compliance paperwork and other stuff like that. And so we have a compliance software framework built that they sell then to their customers, which is it's pretty diverse as a system. I've had to code all kinds of custom extensions and things just to get everything to work properly. But yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Brad, you tell us where you're from and what you use Wappler for. Sorry again. Brad, can you unmute yourself and tell us where you're from and what you use Wappler for? There you go.
Got it now, I think. Hi, guys. I'm from small town, Williams Lake, British Columbia, Canada. It's about 6 hours north of Vancouver. I use Wappler almost 100% for in-house. I used to do websites, used to have my own business and everything, but now I just work strictly for one of my old clients that I've been working for 20 some years now. And I do mostly data management, database dashboards and client management stuff, and client mobile app. But it's all in-house with the exception of a couple of small personal projects. Everything I do is just for the company I work for. I don't do client work anymore.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks for joining us today. I think I'm going to mispronounce this. Heath, is that correct? If I could ask you to unmute yourself, tell us your name so I can pronounce it properly, where you're from, and what you use Wappler for. There you go.
It's actually Heather. I'm not sure why it says
Heather. Okay. Well, welcome, Heather.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Heather. I'm from Boulder, Colorado, and I use Wappler. I've been developing a travel app for a few years now, and that's what I'm working on. And yeah, a few other small personal projects.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Mark Wren, could you unmute yourself? Tell us your name. where you're from, and what you use Wappler for.
Hey guys, my name is Mark. Living in Boston currently. I'm the CTO, co-founder of a company that helps families caring for somebody with dementia and frail elders. So we focus on caregivers. I'm a technology guy, so we built a lot of our software in-house. We have Go in the back end for our services. We use Angular currently for our coach UI, and we use Flutter for mobile apps. But looking at Wappler, I'm just trying to figure it all out, research it to try to do some internal systems. We manage hardware distribution, we do sales and other things, and just looking for tools that we could use to integrate with our existing services that would help us build some stuff quickly without doing a full-on software development team effort to try to craft some of these internal tools.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
Mr. John Stanton. Mr. John Stanton is famous in the Wappler community for leading off the Wappler meetups, doing a live demonstration, which was awesome.
Hello.
You want to tell everybody your name, where you're from, and what you use Wappler for?
Yeah, John Stanton from Essex in the UK, which is about 30 miles east of London. And been using, well, it goes right back to Dreamweaver days. So I was using the DMX Zone extensions back in the early 2000s. Yeah, jumped on the Wappler journey when they announced the Indiegogo campaign. So I backed it and have just got using it more and more and more. Now I've been developing web stuff for about 30 years, and probably 50% of my time now is in Wappler and 50% is in WordPress. But I'm trying to tip that balance so it's more and more Wappler and less WordPress. So I'm spending quite a bit of time rebuilding sites that I'd previously done in WordPress, just to try and get away from that.
That's awesome. Awesome. Thank you, John. I'm going to, is it Jacques?
Yes, so
Awesome.
Frédéric Jacques. Yes,
Thank you.
I'm based in Strasbourg in France, so very close to the German border. And so we use Wappler to do in-house small apps for our workers, so they can connect to get info from different systems. So usually very small apps, like 5 to 6 pages.
That's very interesting. Thank you so much for joining us. Max, if you could actually unmute yourself, tell everybody your name, where you're from, and what you use Wappler for.
Hi, everybody. First time here. So glad to see you guys. Yes, I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I use Wappler since, let me see, 2018, I think. I use it for speed up my projects. That's the first thing I really like about Wappler. I've been doing programming since 1996, more or less. It's amazing how can you speed up things with Wappler, and at the same time, I don't have to work with a big group of people, So it's cheaper for my clients. I work with institutions here in Argentina and in South America in general, and some enterprises around the world. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of Wappler here.
That's awesome, Max. Thank you. George is going to love that commercial. That's wonderful.
I'm sure he.
I'm going to Bancold. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Could you tell us your name, where you're from, and what you use Wappler for?
All right. Thank you, everybody. My name is Bankole Makinde, but you can call me Banky. I live in Maryland, USA. I've been using Wappler to manage the previously designed application from Dreamweaver. It's been awesome. I've enjoyed the tutoring from Ben and Brian and many couple of people in this forum, and I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Is there anybody else? I've called on everybody that has their video on. If there's anybody else that'd like to introduce themselves, please feel free to do that now. All right, very good. The two things that I found very interesting is there's a fair amount of folks that are using Wappler in-house to develop their own solutions. And the second thing is, that's always the case with this community, is everybody is always thrilled with the help and support they get from people like Brian English and Ben Plaisir, when their videos are awesome. I would encourage you again to visit the Wappler YouTube channel. And if there's anybody that's online who you come up with a unique solution, or you have a favorite tool within Wappler you'd like to present to the rest of the community, we'd love to hear from you. I know Bob, the Iceman from the lakes, is going to present here in the coming months. We can't wait to see that. The next thing I'd like to do is talk about the last update, which was 5.3.1. Does anybody have any favorite tools that are updates that is helping with your development? Or does anybody have any bugs or issues that they've had with the update?
I'll jump in here. I love the new commenting section, because I tend to comment my scripts a lot, just so, because it's usually 6 months later and I go back and I'm like, what the heck was I doing there? So I've and before I was using multiple lines, so I'd say comment, 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 and then just kind of, these 4 comments are now where I can use one. I did run into an issue. I've got a site that I work on that's still using classic ASP, and it had a glitch with the way that the data was talking to the database. We jumped through a bunch of hoops with George and Patrick, and they finally figured out what's going on. I had to revert back to the 5.2.3, I think. But George tells me here on this next update they're gonna get that fixed. So hopefully they'll get that ironed out.
Cool, thank you. Anybody else?
Not so much the last update, but I'm very much looking forward to a future update when Couch and PouchDB get added, which I believe is in the next few weeks.
I'm sorry, I missed that. What was that?
CouchDB and PouchDB
Got it.
should be added probably, I don't know, three or 4 weeks time, which I've been waiting years for. So I containing my excitement.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask you a question there, John?
Yeah.
So what's the benefits, or what are you using that would use those?
What I will use them for is mobile apps. So it's to specifically solve the issue of someone being out of internet signal, to be able to work with data, update, add records, update data, and then when they've got their signal again, whether it's on Wi-Fi or mobile, it synchronizes with the main database. So engineers, I'm building a system for engineers out in the field, and they're frequently going to be in places where there's no cell phone signal. And so they need to be able to have their work schedule for the day already on their phone. They need to be able to work with that throughout the day. And then when they've got a signal while they're back on Wi-Fi, it will then update for the main system. Okay. And that's what I see Pouch DB solving. So I've held off doing mobile app development until that feature, which is why I'm so excited.
Okay.
Oh, awesome. It sounds like another future meetup presentation as well. I'm loving this.
Brian did an excellent teaser video a few days ago, which was when I realized I've been hounding George for ages for when this is going to be. And when I saw Brian's video, it was a woohoo moment. shall we say.
Yeah, I can't give you any exact times on when this is coming because it's the video sort of happened by accident almost when I was chatting with George about some other initiatives. But I understand he's talking about maybe 2-3 weeks. So it should be with you. Well, perhaps not the next update, certainly the update after. I'll confess I knew nothing about Pouch Couch until I did the research for that teaser. And I'm looking forward to playing with it when it arrives. May well be I'll be able to put some sort of tutorial out on it, but I've got to learn how to use it myself first, of course. So see what I can do. If I can get a tutorial out there, obviously I'll get a bit of support, hopefully from George, etc. Then I will certainly do that.
I feel like anything Brian or Ben learns is just like, because then you know there's a video coming, there's a tutorial coming, there's screenshots. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. Very kind words. Thank you, Stephen. I'm not sure if it was the 3.1 update or the update before that, but Node.js was loading Node version 12. And with Node version 12, the uploads to AWS S3 failed. And to resolve that, we upgraded to Node version 16, and it resolved the issue. If that helps anybody, I thought you'd like to know. So 5.3.1 updates or anything happening with anybody have any other comments or
I'm curious about how to best install Node when you're setting up Wappler on a machine. I'm working on Mac OS, but I've tried it on Windows and other methods, and I've just struggled every time with, if I install it myself, Wappler doesn't seem super happy with the way I do it. And if I let Wappler install it, my Mac is not then happy. It's complaining about it. So anyone have any tips on that?
Yeah, I think personally on Windows, I tend to use a Windows platform. I've got a Mac. It sits in a door and, to be honest, very rarely gets a bit of sunlight. Yeah, I've got exactly the same. Yep. I personally prefer to install Node separately. When I'm doing a reinstall, I'm in the machine I'm on now. I built about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And I actually played about with a little bit. I installed Node separately. I allowed Wappler to do it, reset the machine. And I felt more comfortable with doing that. Also, I tend to prefer to install Docker for anybody using Docker separately. Now, there was talk some time ago, and it seems to have died a death. George did infer that he might be looking to remove the auto install processes within Wappler for Node and Docker because he preferred the idea of having tutorials, particularly in relation to Docker, because he was looking at Docker alternatives. So obviously, if he wanted to introduce alternatives, then he would be looking to remove the auto install. That seems to have gone quiet because I'm going back now 6 months plus. So I'm not really sure what's happening on that. I suspect he probably hasn't found a suitable alternative to Docker yet, but Docker is getting a pretty heavy, complex platform, and there are some much lighter weight alternatives out there now.
Can I ask one quick Docker question, which hopefully is an easy one? But my understanding of Docker is if I have, say, 3 Wappler projects on the go, I effectively have 3 web servers running, and Docker is the whole kit and caboodle. And so more and more projects just uses up more and more space. Have I understood that correctly?
Are you asking me that, John?
I'm asking, asking anyone who knows.
I'm not a big Docker fan, I'll be honest. I tend to use VPS and Node. Docker is a technology in the same way as FTP is. Basically, your traditional FTP, it will send file by file up to your server. With Docker, effectively what it does is it creates a zip file. It's actually a tarball, I understand, of your entire site, including the operating system and everything, uploads that, drops that into a droplet, which is just effectively a virtual container running on Docker, explodes that, and actually recreates the entire server, the content, and everything. as a result. With certain exceptions, it doesn't overwrite your database. And obviously, if you're going to have image uploads, etc., then it still protects your uploads folder as defined within your projects. I believe there are some people who have managed to run more than one site on a single droplet. Not something I've ever tried. I've never seen a need. You can fire up a single droplet on Docker for $6 or whatever, running one core, small amount of memory, which is actually still a fair bit of power. And I would always deploy each website personally to a separate droplet. That's the end of my knowledge of Docker because I don't use it.
Yeah, that's kind of how I understood it. I think it's more when you're local running. I mean, I use MAMP, so I run Apache and all the ancillary stuff with MAMP, and I'll just create another local host as needed. But it means the actual operating system or the web server is just the one instance. Whereas Docker, I get the feeling each one is another complete server, as it were, which just to me seems like a massive overhead.
It's not, John, I don't think, because each droplet effectively, it's like creating a private virtual server as a single instance for your website. So you have your, let's say, DigitalOcean, let's say, account. Within that, you create droplets, which is effectively a virtual server container. And then each website is running as a completely separate instance. So it's not unlike going on with a standard VPS and then creating multiple sites within a single VPS. They all run completely containerized and separate from each other. And you just pay per droplet, i.e. per site.
But what about the local development? That's the bit that I'm concerned about.
All right. So when you set a website to run as a local Docker container, then you simply have Docker local installed on your machine, and it will just, as you fire up that particular project, it will open up that Wappler, Docker project within Docker local and manage that all for you. It will manage its database, it will manage the server, and you can set it so that when you leave that, it will shut that instance down automatically for you.
So does anybody have experience with or know what a virtual machine is? So basically, this is what's considered a light virtual machine. It's basically with virtual machines, but which we call heavy virtualization back in the day. You'd have a whole operating system, you'd have a whole environment, it would emulate the hardware and everything, and you'd run a separate operating system instance in your application tier on top of that. Now with containers and Docker, what it is it's actually a component of the operating system that provides an isolated sandbox of a sandbox snapshot of the OS to your application tier. And so what that means is the only thing that's actually separated and isolated that you're only running on top is just the application tier separately from each other. You're not duplicating the whole operating system. And so Docker is pretty industry standard at this point. I mean, I know there are some other options. I know there are also on other operating systems, like for example, BSD, they have jails, which is basically their implementation of containerization and whatnot. But basically the Docker file, which defines what a container is, gives particular instructions as to what needs to be installed and ran within the application tier within the container. And so if you've ever actually opened up the Wappler project files and you look at the Docker file that gets generated, for example, you can see the different bash commands that actually say, okay, I need to set up these data volumes where we're going to store the files, where we're going to what files we're going to put, what we're mounting them in, what is the startup command that actually starts the application and whatnot. And there can be inheritance too between Docker files. So like, for example, you can say, okay, I want to build on top of this other image. So let's say it's like a lamp stack, for example. So you can say, okay, I want to use this Docker file up here on GitHub, let's say, that defines a lamp stack, and then on top of that, run my stuff. And so that's basically how Docker works in essence. It's light virtualization that is focused on just isolating the application from each other.
So it's actually a lot more efficient.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's a
No,
lot more
sorry,
efficient
no.
than virtual machines. Yes. And so you can run multiple. So and the reasoning for this obviously is let's say I want to put different applications on the same server. We're running on the same server hardware, but we want them to be isolated from each other, very strongly isolated from each other. So let's say, like, for example, if we have like 3 medical systems on there, and they all need to be HIPAA compliant or something like that, then you could isolate them from each. They have strong sandboxing around them. There's no possibility that if somebody breaches into one of the applications sandboxes, they can get into the operating environment of the other applications. And so then when also things are operated at scale, we can also talk about how we want to deploy them. So we might be able to set up a whole set of servers that fail over to each other automatically and distribute those containers around as needed and scale them up and create more shards if we need to scale the application larger, or decrease it down if you need less throughput. And so really it is a operations focused technology that emphasizes flexibility for the deployment and usage of these applications, and also it ensures a certain level of security too between them. So you can have a mixed environment. You can have one host server, but you could have multiple applications for different customers and things running on that same host server, but they're strictly isolated from each other. It's different than, like, let's say, if you have your typical hosting plan, let's say with a web host that has PHP, and you're installing websites in a subdirectory of one larger website, right? Those aren't isolated. If I'm able to, SSH into the root, then I can get into the children. So this is that kind of solves that dilemma.
I think it's great that you're mentioning this, because I did some development in the past that were HIPAA websites, and it is extremely complicated and easy to misstep. And now that I'm not working with a big team, when I learned Docker for Wappler, I just saw all these spots that you really need to be aware of if you're going to use it for production, for anything sensitive, because there's a lot of ways that if you don't know the door's already open there, or that it's a really easy way that somebody can get in. I just found Docker to have a lot of unknowns. It's working great, but if you don't test these spots, you can get in trouble. And I found like services like Heroku are great if you're a smaller organization, even though they charge. You might be paying less with Heroku than you are to have a database node or and a node set up for your Docker. So I found that Heroku, even though they've gone with pricing model changes and things like that, are still a great value if you don't have a big team and a lot of security background.
And that's fair with with Docker. There are a lot of gotchas, especially if you're coming into it new. At one time, I've gotten a little bit better, but I'm still a novice to it. I'm more used to traditional virtualization. I'm an old VM person, so but it's it definitely is a little bit to wrap your head around how Docker works and the issues with that. When you're looking at managed services, which take on a lot of the security and a lot of those options, especially like, for example, ones where you could just give them the container and they'll manage the rest of the infrastructure around it, that can be a big boost.
The other thing about Docker, which I really like from a development perspective, is theoretically you can have your developers do all their work in a container, push it up, and then drop it into production, and that nothing has changed on the way to production. Typically you go to Git, you pull it to some other build system, it gets built, it goes to production, and the developer says, I never saw that in my system, right? And so you have these bugs that creep through the system because of the typical development process. So one of the attractive things,
a folder's missing, or there's a file that was on production, but that wasn't in the Git repo, or stuff like that. Yeah.
It's one of the attractive things for us in terms of a process for development. The other thing that Docker gives you is you can have different versions of your subsystem. So if you need an Apache version X for this project and Apache version Y or a Python release, and if you have it all in one system, they conflict with each other. So Docker gives you the ability to isolate what for that project you need these tools. It gets bundled in a package and you push it up to the server. They're very lightweight. They come up really quickly, really low utilization of resources. So we've been using Docker since 2014. So it's actually a very nice tool.
All right. I think I want to come back to Mark here in just a second. Ben, looked like you had something you wanted to contribute about Docker. Would you like to take the floor, as it were?
Yes, I just had a question for Thomas. He mentioned that there was no duplication of service using Docker, but my understanding was that each Docker environment contains its own server. Like if you're using Apache, then each Docker environment will have, or each site will have its own Apache server. So wouldn't it be that when you've got 3 applications running, that you'd also have 3 different Apache service running as well?
Well, so Apache is a web server that runs in the application tier. So just to clarify something I said, when I talk about server, I'm talking about the actual server OS.
Okay.
So the host system. But yes, anything that's at the application tier, which would also include the Apache servers, this is running in user runtime, not in the operating system kernel, but something running in the user environment. Apache runs in the user environment. So that gets isolated. So it's basically everything above the OS gets isolated, gets an isolated environment. It gets its own isolated view of the operating system. That's how that works.
Okay. Yeah, I don't use Docker. I find it a little bit too complicated.
To be completely honest.
Well, the thing is that originally I started using it because it was so easy to set up locally. Well, that's about where my experience ends. I find now with Node.js that we've got the same ease of implementation for the local environment. So I don't see any need for Docker really. I don't know if you've seen my videos or my video on Rails, I think it's called, a host that you can use. You don't FTP to the host. Create a Git repository, and Rails grabs that repository and installs it as a website. No extra actions or anything. I don't know if anybody of you have seen the video. Worthwhile.
To be fair, I don't actually use Docker that much, honestly. I probably have one system running on it through Wappler. Most of my other stuff is running just on a traditional host. Though to be fair, some of those websites were built when it was just PHP and ASP in Wappler, so they haven't made the jump to Node.js yet. My big production system with my largest client, we've been using Wappler for 2.5 years now. And so that one is a behemoth, and that one ain't moving yet. I eventually in the future it might get upgraded to be running in a Docker environment, especially as we continue to scale the system. But for the most part, there is a certain ease to being able to just FTP push everything up to your standard run-of-the-mill dime a dozen PHP hosting services. So, and I always thought that was really a nice thing with Wappler, being able to do that all in one environment. So.
Quick question. Has anybody built a site in Wappler, maybe in PHP or ASP, and has then rebuilt exactly the same site in Node.js?
Yes, I have actually, John. The first site that I ever built in Wappler, going back to, can't remember how long ago, when Wappler was released. I had a student accommodation management system to write. I used that basically as my training course. If you look at some of my very early videos, you'll see a lot of mentions of universities and things like that, because that's the system I was building. They later wanted some fairly heavy integration in with some APIs, and I decided that because there was such a major rewrite, as it were, that I would convert the whole site over to Node. It was actually surprisingly simple in terms of getting it initially running. Server actions are really easy. You just open the existing server action. You take out the include statement at the start and the closing square bracket at the end, and resave it as a JSON file. And there you are. You've now ready to run within the Node environment. It really is that easy. What I did then was I simply created the EJS pages. I then actually copy and pasted the content of the old PHP pages into those new containers. So effectively what I did was I created an entire Node site, but it was not at that stage layout stroke, content page stroke, partials set up. And then from then it was just a bit of a tweak. And the whole process probably took me certainly less than a week to be able to do that, from what was a project that had taken me 8 months to write and originally in PHP. So it was quite a good size. So it's not as complicated as you would think. If you want to give it a try, I really would suggest take a small PHP site. I would say the server action side of things, your API action is dead easy. Just take those initial headers and their closing bracket out. So you just have the actual JSON left. Resave that as a JSON file. And then you can literally copy and paste your HTML, etc., over into an EJS container, and then a little bit of tweaking just at the end, just to make sure. And if you want to then take the next step and actually introduce your layout pages, you can just create a layout page, and then you literally take the header section out of your content page and link it to your layout, and 99% of your work's done. So it isn't that bad, John.
Cool. It's something I'm definitely going to be doing, but I've got too many projects that started in PHP that are just still in PHP.
Yep. No, I totally understand. It's big. It's a big job when we've got a lot to do. Yeah.
Interesting. I'd like to go back to Mark, if I could. I understand you've been using, is it Docker since 2014?
Yes, that's right.
And the two things that I heard was Docker makes things really simple to upload and deploy. Other thing I heard was there's some security issues. How do you, can you tell us how you handled the security issues within Docker?
So, security in software is all about the tools you're using, how many tools you're using, and what kind of vulnerabilities are in all of those tools. So if you're thinking about, we're a HIPAA company, so if you're thinking about exposure, surface area, if you will, to people hacking into your system, the smaller the surface area, the better by default, right? So the thing about Docker is we build our servers in a language called Go. And Go has the benefit of not requiring Apache or any other web server. It's built in, and it's very small and quick to operate. And we also deploy our Go apps on an operating system called Alpine, which in itself is a very small surface Linux distribution. So by doing that, you can also run tools. I believe Docker uses something called SNCC to do an evaluation of your servers to see if you have exposure. So there's automation processes that when you deploy with Docker will run through your deployment to make sure it's clean in terms of known vulnerabilities. And then you can take that container and deploy it into production. So from our perspective, it just makes sure the developers use the same tools, they get deployed to tests, which uses that same instance of the container, and then it gets deployed to production. And then if you have to roll back, you can roll back the previous version of the container. It's like flip a switch and you go back to what you had before. All the database stuff is outside of the container. And the container is just really, you think about it as the software bucket. It's a component, and you deploy the component through your development stages. And it provides, this isolation that we talked about from perspective of it's like a virtual machine, it's very lightweight. So there's the runtime isolation. And then there's just all the process benefits in terms of software development. Does that sort of answer your questions?
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hi, may I ask a follow-up question?
Sure, go ahead.
Hi, okay, just to be clear, with the, I believe you said database, and forgive me, I'm not a technical user, so just simplify this for me. So if I know that I have a pretty large database of users, am I going to want to have that outside of Docker, like on like a different server? I don't know if my question makes sense.
Yeah, so let me address that. Docker, when you spin up a new container, everything that's in the container basically doesn't live. So if you're storing your database files inside the container, you issue a new build of that container, there's no guarantee you'll keep that data around. So what you do is you externalize the data, and then Docker has a way to sort of point at that data externally. For us, because we're HIPAA, we actually keep our database in a secondary network, which is unavailable to the internet. And then we have to go through the gateway of our servers to get to our HIPAA data. So it's this abstraction of the data outside of the container itself behind further security barriers is really good for security. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And just to follow up with that idea, the thing that I'm trying to rebuild, the first one was built like on a droplet through DigitalOcean.
Yeah.
So a droplet and Docker are two different types of things, right? A droplet,
yeah, droplet is a virtual machine, if anybody's familiar with that technology.
Someone open if I make the thing in the Docker and I put it on there, once it opens, like that's it. Does that make sense? Like it's like a seed that you put into the VPS and that's it?
Yeah, that's right. Docker, you can think of it like it's sort of analogous to an Apache server having multiple folders and you just got to run the website of these multiple folders. But Docker is a little more grown up. It's actually sort of like mini virtual machines that you can run on your same, virtual machine, basically. So either bare hardware or virtual machines, you can run multiple Docker instances of your systems, and you keep it all boxed in this nice little unit that you can deploy to other services as you need. So does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Thank you.
You can take a droplet and you can put all that stuff into a container and then deploy that container to AWS or Azure or whatever else you want to run your software on.
Okay, very good. That's so helpful. Thank you, guys.
Sure.
Thank you for joining us today.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Max.
Oh, okay. My experience was pretty funny. I started using Docker because I want to start with let me think, Rocket Chat. Yes. So Rocket Chat is an amazing application like Slacks. I was amazing, like, wow, I can install this in my server just with a click. Okay. So I started enjoying Docker a lot. When Wappler comes with Node.js, I didn't rebuild my applications in PHP to Node.js, but I used it to connect each other. So I remember I have an application in PHP that have a chat. So it was a really not good chat and have a lot of issues and everything. So I think, okay, I'm gonna do this chat with Node.js. And I use it, I use a lot Linode, yes, as a service. And so I connected, I deployed my PHP application in Linode and my Node.js chat. I connected each other, yes. Like Mark said, I always use the data outside the box, outside the Docker deployment, not inside. I have a lot of troubles with data inside Docker, so I learned that. And what's pretty amazing, I could speed up some applications using 2 words, Node.js. Sorry, 3 words, because I program in Go. So it's really amazing what you can do. Another example I can remember now is that you can use microservices using Docker. So you can, if you have a pretty large project, you can some part of the project put it in a Docker containment. And sorry, my English when I speak, I'm really rusty. I do a lot of writing. I'm not speaking. I live in Houston, Texas, a few years ago, and so it's come back to me. So you can slash your application, microservices, and use it together. And it's very easy to maintain that. People think that using Docker and microservices and big infrastructures are pretty difficult to use. But with a small team of 5 guys, we actually doing for a large client here in Argentina. The name is Mercado Libre. Perhaps you know that. And we run a lot of microservices there inside. And you can figure out when you look at that amazing application that have a lot of incomes because it's a application where you can, it's like Amazon, yes, but here in South America. So you can, there a lot of space, a lot of incoming products, photograph, a big data, okay? So using microservices in Docker, so every part is isolated from each other, you can run a big, massive application and information. But if your project is small, I don't recommend it. I recommend using, the standard server deployment because it's if you wanna change your server from Linode to Amazon to every month, okay, do it. But if not, just use the normal deployment.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your contribution, Max. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to discuss about Node or Docker along this line? All right, I'd like to move on to the next item in our agenda today. It was a real popular the last couple of meetups is, I'd like your folks to share your favorite tool, whether it be a favorite tool you're using while developing, whether maybe it's how to manage colors, how to measure, another plugin. So wonderful time to share. Stephen, you want to start us off?
I'll be glad to share one that's made a really big difference working with clients and with other people. It's not really a technical tool, but it is called Beyond Bullet Points. It's just a book. You can find a little synopsis of it online, but it really helps you understand what someone else is asking of you, even when they don't really know. And if you work with others and maybe there's a project you need to discuss and there's really not an hour to bring them up to speed on it, if you have followed something like Beyond Bullet Points, it just gives you a little bit of a way to do an outline. But if you follow something like that and on every project, it's like 50% of your work is done. It's crazy. So that's my tool, even though it's not technical.
That sounds awesome. When you said working with client tool, I thought it was going to be something like a baseball bat or a hammer.
Well, this helps you avoid that feeling a little bit.
I just want to point out this is not violent. It was just to get their attention. Oh, thank you, Stephen. I will look that up. Who else would like to share a tool? I think last month, John shared a tool about managing with color, wasn't it?
Oh, that would have been the Adobe Color. I think someone else had a different tool as well, but yeah, it's all part of the Adobe Creative Cloud.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Color.adobe.com off the top of my head.
Very good. But I have to ask, Max, what is your baby's name?
My baby's name is Constantino. Oh, yeah.
Oh, all right. That's
yeah,
wonderful.
Constantino Augusto.
Constantino. Well, so glad you could join us. It's yes. Is Constantino going to be a developer?
I don't know yet, but I think he will be. He likes computers a lot. Yeah.
All right, very good. Then the next Mark Zuckerberg coming up now. And speaking of Mark, what's your friend's name?
Oh, let's see. Yeah, it's open. So this is Jimbe.
Jimbe.
So, yeah, he's a little chihuahua.
All right, Jimbe, sit. It works. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
I've got one. If we,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Using Wappler, it seems like more and more. Almost, I'm dealing with APIs nonstop, and the tool I probably use the most in troubleshooting that is Postman. I just thought I'd bring that up. Some people that deal with APIs, they probably use Postman all the time, but for anybody that's on the chat here that's never used Postman, I don't know how many times I'm in Wappler and I'm getting things laid out and I'm just like, why won't this work? Why won't this work? Set the same thing up in Postman and then it'll work there. So you go, okay, well, I know my API calls are correct. How do I implement those into Wappler to get those to work that way I want to? So Postman's it's a free tool, whatever, and you slap your scheme in there and hit go, and it'll send the thing, and you can troubleshoot and really. And I ran into a problem the other day when I was what was I installing? I was doing something where it wasn't hitting my webhook. So there's what is that site? Webhook.site, webhooks.site, something like that. And so basically, I can Postman out to that, and then you can actually see what's being sent to the end also. So to tell if your data is getting sent to the endpoint the way you want it to. So between those two tools, I was able to troubleshoot all, because I've been dealing with this UPS stuff and testing the different endpoints. But basically, Postman to set things up, and then you can set up your own webhook and send it over there to see what the data is actually doing. Because what happened was in Wappler, and it could be a bug, but if you set up the auth and use the auth tool and you do the drop down, and then you go, no, I'm actually gonna manually put those steps in there, right? Well, Wappler didn't rewrite my script right, so I basically ended up having to delete it and rebuild it. And when I rebuilt it, it did it correctly, but by using Postman and the endpoints, I was able to troubleshoot that, to figure out where my problem actually was. So just my 2 cents.
It saves a lot of time. I always like to get out of trouble faster than I get into it myself.
Well, I get into it a lot.
I've got one very quick. I saw a tweet this morning from someone which just gave some HTML tips, some of which I was already aware of and have used, but some of which I just did not know existed. So I'll just post a link to the tweet. I'm hoping that it will work, but there's some little gems. They've literally just some HTML tags that I didn't know existed. So might be, I found very interesting.
All right, awesome. Thank you. You're gonna post that in the, oh, there it is. Got it.
Posted it. So,
Also, there's another one in the chat, and feel free to use the chat if you have a tool or something you'd like to share with the Wappler community. The another one that came up I'm not familiar with is insomnia.rest. Would somebody like to explain that?
Yeah. Hi everyone. My name is Ronnie. So I am the one who posted at insomnia.rest. So it's a pretty lightweight tool that I would like to just run across and let's see the input and see the output, what response I would get. Similar like Postman, what they explained, and this one is like I'm friendly with insomnia, so something I use often. So I don't know if others have used insomnia, but something I feel like is pretty lightweight. Again, seeing like some API responses, you sometimes find an issue with it, and I just feed in the fields, put in a JSON input, and just fire it across and get output and check where the error is. It would be a really nice feature to have in Wappler if I could see the output at each step. Sometimes we tend to develop like really complicated flows. Consider like transaction monitoring or something where you have several steps and several steps which can have errors in them, and it would be like really difficult to fire the API every time you would want to know what went wrong and where it went wrong. So similar like a tool called Any10, which shows you the output of each step. If Wappler could do something like that, it would have been really good and helpful to troubleshoot API issues.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you very much for sharing. Does anybody else have a tool or anything, a tip they'd like to share before we sign off here?
Yes, I have one more question. So this is something I've asked a couple of times on the forum, and because I'm not a developer, I feel like I didn't quite understand if the tool already exists in Wappler or not. I don't know if you guys heard of like, so in regards to CMS, like Directus and Strapi and these sort of things. So I'll be working with people who are non-technical like me, and all I've gathered so far is these tools are Node.js, just like Wappler builds Node.js. So they're what I've been seeing in the comments where, yeah, this is a really great tool to integrate. This is really, it works perfectly, but I don't really understand, or I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. Like how to integrate it with Wappler, or if Wappler has something like that that non-technical users can use already to kind of like manage like database stuff, etc., without going too deep into code. I don't know if you've heard of it, Directus or Strapi or whatever other CMS that like links in.
Anybody want to take a stab at that?
I'm very new, like, less than 2 years of just doing Wappler stuff. So I'm just kind of jumping in to help the conversation if anybody else can correct me maybe. But in my experience, knowing some code has been really essential, because Wappler sometimes will insert the code in the wrong place, or it will do the code just the way you want, except like one tiny thing. And it's very understandable if you know what Wappler's doing in the background and you can catch it and just fix it. It's like, boom. And if you watch some of the older Wappler meetups, you'll see these kind of things. It's really common. You'll hit bumps along the way. And if you're not familiar with what the code's doing or where something should be, I think that's going to be a really big hurdle. You can use tools. I came across codemap.app recently, like codemap.app. Somebody made it's like 99 cents a month, and you can drop your code in there and it'll visualize it in a map. So you can see like this connects here, this connects here. But even with that, I think if you don't know what should be happening, I think it might be a difficulty. Now, please, other people jump in and help me out here. Correct me on that.
No, that's really good to know. And I guess the function then, if I like, let's say we don't know what the name of the tool is. The function is I want to be able to look at the database without like, going into like a black box and do things. Check something on or off, or see what's happening like in real time. Is that something that is a tool already in Wappler that I just don't know about?
Yeah, you can. I mean, are you saying asking? You just want to just see what's in the database, what's in a table or something?
Let's say I just have to access it for like details. Like one of the so the app that I'm trying to recreate already exists. Then one of the things that it does like a soft delete. So when a person or a mod removes something, it'll like highlight for our end as admin, and on their end, they can't see it. Let's say I want to reference that thing. How do I go into the database to see it?
Yeah, you should be able to do that with Wappler's database tools. And there's all kinds of different database tools that you can use outside of Wappler's. And I actually use, because there's if you're doing Microsoft stuff, there's the Microsoft. I can't think what the name of the tool is. There's a bunch of different tools that you can use to use that kind of stuff. And
do you feel comfortable using Wappler tools, or you feel like it needs like a third party kind of thing to see?
I kind of use both.
Okay.
I have a third party tool, and Wappler's tools kind of keep getting better.
Okay.
I've got another tool, and I always just seem to go to that because one of the issues, you can't separate that tool from Wappler. You can't have it. Most of us work on multiple screens. I can't have my database connection over here. So I'll have, I'll be doing a remote desktop into the server or something like that to get to my tools there on one screen, and Wappler on the other. But you can do both. And and the other thing, Stephen was saying, it's Wappler is low code, not zero code.
Oh, I get that. But you guys got enrolled. I'm like, this is my first semester. But in the meantime, like, the idea still has to come out. And I swear this must be the thing that's going to make me not only be able to, develop the thing, but also understand as I learn. So I was just trying to get like high level understanding.
What I've found with Wappler is that sometimes it's so powerful, and you're trying to do so much on one page of just different stuff, that whenever I'm having an issue, I'll recreate that issue on a blank page with not much going on, so I can troubleshoot it. Am I doing this stuff right? Does this work the way I think I should? Okay, yeah. Okay, now once I've troubleshot that, I'll bring it back in and add it to my code on my page with all my functions on it.
It's a very good tip. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you.
I agree. Excellent, Iceman. Excellent tip. All right. Well, we've gone over our 1 hour allotment. I want to thank everybody again for participating in the Wappler Meetup. Next month, we have Paul from Stryden from South Africa, who will be doing his follow-on tutorial. I would like to invite everybody on the call to consider joining us at future monthly meetups. And if you have a tip or favorite Wappler solution, or if you're very knowledgeable in Docker or Node and you'd like to share, I'd love to hear from you. We can set you up in a meetup so you can share it back with the community. Once again,
Mark,
yes.
can I speak for a minute? Sorry
Yes,
about
Ronnie,
that.
go ahead.
I just want to mention one tool. I know AI has been making drastic changes in how we work and how we do things over here. This decade has been all about AI and ML. There is one tool which has been making waves around since December 8th, which is ChatGPT. So I don't know if everyone's heard about it. It's making a lot of difference. Like you just tell it what you want. Even Wappler, you just tell like you are facing a certain problem in Wappler. It's going to it learned over the years till 2021, and it's going to tell you the solution of how to approach a particular thing. ChatGPT is definitely making a difference out there, and like it would be wonderful if people start using it. Custom modules we do all the time in Wappler, so it's really helpful. That's it. Sorry again.
No worries. Thank you so much. We'll definitely have to check that out as well. So
I've just posted a link to it in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you, John. The chat is a very helpful tool. Thank you for using that, John.
Yeah,
We
I
appreciate
see
it.
John L has been using the ChatGPT a lot for doing AI replies within the forum itself. And it's really clever, the abilities that it has, but it can also write code for you as well.
It sounds.
And in a month, it's worth nearly $30 billion.
Yeah, it can do like homework. It can write poems. It can literally do anything. And it's original stuff. It just literally writes its own code. It's not copyright material or anything. It writes its own code. It knows Python. It knows Go. It knows Golang. Every language out there.
Oh, that's interesting. We'd love to see a demonstration of that in the future. If anybody's up for it, that'd be kind of fun to watch, entertaining. All right. Well, thank you all very much. I look forward to hearing from you in the forum. If there's anything you'd like to present or anything I can do to help. I wish everybody a very safe and prosperous new year, and I look forward to seeing you on the first Friday in February. Take good care. We'll talk soon.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks a lot.